All right. So, in many times in wrestling, we focus on the man or the woman on the mat. Um, but as most of us know, there's a committed team behind each and every successful wrestler. Even those that aren't so successful, there's usually a mom in a stand screaming her head off, and people going wild for them. And wrestling's unlike probably any sport when it comes to the support systems that it takes for us to be successful. And I wouldn't be it'd be bad on me to talk to probably we call him the GOAT, the king of wrestling, without talking to part of his support team. I like to call them the first family of wrestling. Behind every great king is a great queen, and so now I have Lauren Burroughs in the hot seat with her husband. And we're going to talk about what it means to be the royal family of wrestling. And that's what I've deemed this podcast, because I just, I see you guys as the ambassadors. And again, Jordan and I have had the chance to sit down and talk about wrestling. But Lauren, I appreciate you being here to give us the other side. Yeah. So I want to get right into it. I know there's multiple stories about how this happened. We even talked about this a little bit last night. But so how did this come to be?
Excuse me. So I come from a wrestling family, and my youngest brother, Maddie, was wrestling at the NCAAs in 2011. So I was in the stands watching him with my family. And it was one of the earlier rounds. Is it Thursday morning? Thursday morning. And Jordan came up to the mat in front of me. We were actually sitting right in front of the mat. And I think you were one of the first matches, or maybe you weren't, because you weren't.
Yeah, 165, so I couldn't have been first, but it probably was the first round.
Maybe I'm thinking because the arena was practically empty in that session. There was hardly anyone in there.
I was the first person you noticed.
Yeah. But he came up to the mat, and he just had this like really cool style. And I was watching, my dad was sitting next to me, and he said, watch this guy. He's incredible, and he's going to be an Olympic gold medalist someday. Wow. This was in 2011. Wow. And my dad, he knows wrestling, and he'd love to hear me say, like,
it's a true story.
Just pat his back because he just knows so much about wrestling and wrestlers and who's going to translate well to freestyle. So I just watched him, and I was like, well, yeah, he's really good, but he's good looking. And I joke with everyone because he looked like tall, dark, and handsome, but he just ended up being dark and handsome.
2 out of 3.
But he's so long, and his limbs are so long. And when you're looking up, or when you're looking down from up in the stands, he looked tall. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I hit him up I added him as a friend on Facebook, and then that's where you pick up the story. Hopefully he tells the truth. This story gets really gray in here.
So after we started talking on Facebook, and we were just cordial friends, because typically, right, like as a college wrestler, like no one's really checking for wrestlers. We're not the most popular individuals at the collegiate level. So like I scrolled through my friend requests, and typically at this point in time, I'm a 2-time NCAA champ. I'm gaining more popularity. So my friend request inbox is always full. And so it's typically high school wrestlers, young athletes, high school coaches. And so like I'm scrolling through, and all of a sudden, boom, I see Lauren's page. And so I like stop, and I like go through her photos, right? I had to do a quick vetting. I'm like, man, this girl's cute. And so added her as a friend. We started chatting. I saw in her profile picture, she had a wrestling hat on too. Okay. So that's what kind of really sparked my attention. It was one of the Jeff Parker hats.
It was a UB wrestler that had passed away, but they had made like these flat brim hats for him.
Okay. Yeah. And so I remember
was wearing
seeing
it
that
backwards, and he recognized it.
And so then I reached out.
Which I was a wrestling fan, but I was just a supporter because it was my family. It wasn't like I was some.
Well, you appreciated the sport. You appreciated the sport. Respectfully, there weren't a lot of women in, or at least in my purview, that were appreciative of the sport.
Yeah.
And so.
And most of us we had dads who coached, or our dads wrestled, or our siblings wrestled. So there's an appreciation and a love for it.
And that's typically off limits. Like you never mess with buddies, sisters.
Yeah. Which is funny because I had never dated a wrestler until him.
Yeah.
I had kind of done my own thing, and that's what I grew up around.
Yeah.
So you'd think that would be what I gravitated toward, but it was like we were like family. I was like a sister to the wrestlers. So
yeah, so it was good. I got invited to teach a wrestling clinic in Buffalo a couple months later. And I'm like, hey, I remember that girl Lauren lives here. I'm gonna reach out to her. So I sent her a DM on Twitter.
Wow.
Slid in her DMs like, yo, I'm here for a couple days. Like, I'm teaching at a wrestling camp a few miles away. I'd love to meet you if you get an opportunity to step out for a second. And she was like, sure, I'll come meet you. And I didn't even think she liked me at first, bro. Like, the first encounter was it was so cordial, almost like, what was that? Like when she left, I was literally like, what was that?
Yeah, I was not, because I had just met you. Like, we had communicated so much, but we had only met that was our first time. And I'm not like, I'm a classy lady, okay? I'm not giving you I barely classy. Gave you a hug.
You did, and I was just like, well, guess I won't see her again probably.
That's interesting. So she had game from the beginning.
Yes, I did.
She did. She had poise. She operated with a level of sophistication. That she kind of made it tough on me. She was like, no.
But we had fun.
I'm not impressed. She was like, I'm not impressed by you. You're really good at what you do, but I'm not impressed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I like the story because it's got humble beginnings, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you got a guy that's got a ton of success. I probably would have worked out differently had you come in like guns a-blazing, fangirling him. You know that.
Yeah. For sure.
And
for sure.
This is a little backstory, but my uncle played for the Buffalo Bills when we were growing up. And so I had been very used to like athletic fame. And I had also seen the backside of that. You know, a lot of relationships with professional athletes don't go well. And I knew that wasn't something, like, I was very protective over what I wanted in a relationship. And so to be like, fangirling and impressed, that just like, I was used to that already, and I just wanted something real. Yeah. So I was impressed at how hard he worked and his discipline and things like that. But if his personal life wasn't going to align with it, I was just like, whatever. Yeah. So I had a certain like pride about me that I was not willing to sacrifice for the most part.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so definitely not fangirling. That's good advice.
Mm-hmm. Don't fangirl.
Yeah,
it's hard to say though, right? Like it
is
because you were in the stands, you watched me, you sent me a friend request,
I
you
was
congratulated me.
Fan.
So like,
she's a fan.
You were a fan, but it wasn't like you were like, I'm gonna give myself to you now. It was more so like, hey, I want to introduce myself to you because I think you're really cool.
Yeah. And I could tell by your style that you were very committed to your craft and very dedicated. And there was just like, I mean, the whole rest of there was just something special about you.
I saw special. There you go.
And
there you go.
I like this guy.
I like it.
Right, at least from afar.
She was supposed to be there. Her brother wrestled for America. He's actually really good. 2-time EIWA champ.
Okay.
Matt Mariaka at 141 pounds. He was a 2-time NCAA qualifier. And so it was funny because that year in 2011, you were there to watch your brother. Happened to see me. We met for the first time. And the NCAAs were in Philadelphia that year in 2011, my senior year. Mm-hmm. But I had taken a medical redshirt the year before. I was supposed to finish up my career in 2010.
Yep.
And it was in Omaha that year. But I blew out my knee. I tore my LCL, PCL about 8 matches into the season. So I took a medical redshirt and ended up having my senior year be switched from 2010 to 2011. And that's when she saw me for the first time. Was at the NCAA tournament that year. So it was like super wild. It was one of those things where it was almost like fate. That she just happened to be in the section of the stands where I was wrestling and competing, and that I got hurt the year before, took the red shirt, and then switched to 2011. Everything worked out.
And it was in Philly.
And it was in Philly. Like our city. And we were all staying, like all wrestlers stay at the host hotel, which is like the Marriott downtown Philly on Broad Street. And she was there like with her family. So we're probably like walking literally right past one another in that time. And even crazier story, quick side note.
We had lots of, we could have run into each other.
We were, I was helping my family move a few months ago, and my parents had like this big bracket of, I won senior nationals my senior year in Pittsburgh, NHSCA senior nationals. So anyway, I'm like looking through the bracket. I'm like, man, I wonder how all these guys did in college. And I'm looking through all the names, and in my bracket was her brother. Was her brother. One of her other brothers. So she had 3 brothers. One of her other brothers, in our senior years of high school, we had no idea.
You didn't wrestle though?
I didn't wrestle him. No. I told her if I would wrestle him, she probably wouldn't want to marry me because I would have rolled him up.
He was great. He wasn't great.
But
Right.
it was wild. Like, we had been connected and we didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Her brother and I were wrestling in the same bracket. We were just like,
And then when we
oh,
started,
shoot, Mary Yocker, what the?
And then
That's
when we
awesome.
started talking, we had so many connections. Like it was pretty incredible that I was in college, you were in college, but in different colleges. So
That's
But it's cool.
I love stories like that though, because it's like one thing changes,
yeah,
you don't
And
even
everything
meet.
changes.
right. Or we meet at the wrong time.
Right, exactly.
Like we always say to each other, like we're initially like we wish we would have met when we were younger, but we weren't ready.
Right.
We weren't ready
We probably
to.
still almost met at the wrong time. Probably.
It was
We just
very
kind of
close.
hammered
God
and
works it
forged
out.
ourselves into it
Yeah.
being the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta do that.
So you mentioned something there, and I want to get into that a little bit. You mentioned style with Jordan. Were you talking wrestling style? Were you talking like swag style? Like what was it?
I think it was your wrestling style, but I mean, it's like all encompassing. I think I'm very, both of us, like there's just a certain way that someone has about them that you can kind of tell by their body language, and then you watch them wrestle, and that's like another level of it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. A little bit of
I
everything.
mean, obviously we're
But
wrestling.
everything.
Yeah, we're wrestling. You know, we only
Yeah.
wear the outfit that they give
Yeah.
us. So, but
Yeah.
the singlet.
yeah. Now, speaking of that though, since I mean, obviously you've did a lot with fashion, and you've got the new stuff coming out like that. How much are you involved? Because you can tell that you enjoy fashion. Now, do you help with that process, or are you dressing Jordan behind the scenes, or
Like sometimes.
Sometimes.
I'll buy him an outfit or, give him some suggestions. I think early on it was. I remember when I first came. Well, we were packing. We were packing up his apartment because we had bought our house right before we got married, and we were cleaning out his closet, and there were some items in there. I was like, "What is
like, what
this?"
is you wore
It was
this
like
before?
cargo pants with
Why?
drawstring capris. I'm like, "This has got to
That was
go."
a style.
yeah, you say
It was-
That's what
was
he
the
keeps
era.
telling me. I've never seen
It was
men
the-
wear capris well.
that's funny.
But yeah, like it's been something that I've always, that's like my artistic expression is fashion and clothing. That's always kind of been what I was into. I got best dressed in high school.
Yeah, there you go.
She went to a small school.
No.
Anyways, but yeah, it's just been something that I've been into, and you were kind of into it when we met. But I think
I was always
your
into it, but I've
fashion
grown.
interest is
I
grown.
feel like fashion and athletics intersect with one
Mm-hmm.
another. Like if you look at the fashion shows now, Paris Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week,
yeah,
it's
there's a lot of athletes.
ton of athletes. You got the tunnel walk, you've got the press conferences. Like they've intersected extremely closely over the last couple of years or so. So it's kind of been something I've gotten into. But I grew up, my parents always loved fashion.
Oh, really?
Like my dad always had a ton of suits and he dressed well. My mom had all sorts of purses and heels. And so like for me, it's kind of what I grew up watching, and it gave me kind of an affinity to always present myself to the world in a particular way. So like I was really heavily into fashion, and not like design elements as opposed to like being in, right? Whatever was hip or whatever brand was popular at the time. That was kind of what I was into.
And
but as it
you
grew,
were more so
I started to change.
like brands than I was growing up. I was more like styles and pieces and different things that I could put together that looked.
I was the brand.
But he
guy.
was like the
I was a
brand
big
guy,
brand guy.
which is funny because now you're like, I'm too cheap to be the brand guy.
Well, the brands have changed, right?
Yeah.
I'm not wearing the same brands that
Yeah,
I
you're
was
not
when I
buying
was
like
12 years old. I'm not going to TJ
Yeah,
Maxx.
yeah. We have a
You know what
good
I mean?
mix, I think.
So
you
it's
know.
it's
It's fun to us.
well, you can get fresh now for a
On a
lot
budget.
less expensive.
Sure. Oh,
And
yeah.
At one point, you just bought, like, if it was a T-shirt, like, and even still, like, there are a lot of people now who, if it just has a brand on it, they'll buy it even if it's not cool.
Yeah.
for sure.
But you could go buy something extremely similar for a fraction of the price and style it. Right now, for me, it's material and it's fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that trump everything.
Mhm.
Right.
So yeah.
So with that, did you help with the new launch with stuff? Because it looks really good and it feels really good.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'm so busy with the kids now that I'm a little bit more behind the scenes than I used to be.
Yeah.
But I mean, he knows what I like. So
she either gives a thumbs up or the veto.
I was really like the logos I was pretty particular about because we had been looking for a new logo for years, like probably 3 years between the time we started and the time Rudis launched the new one last week. But I was really particular about that because I wanted something that was symbolic but also simple. I don't like the just using initials and words and using different fonts. Like I wanted it to be like graphic, but also like an image.
Yeah.
So I'm particular about that. And then he's more particular about materials and things. So
the collab was great because the new logo is incredible. It feels incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you study that in school? Like what was your aspirations before being a wrestling wife?
So I was a sports journalist and a videographer for, I went to school. I went to my undergrad for journalism, and then I went and got my master's at Columbia University in New York City for journalism. And then I came out, moved back home, and I got hired by my newspaper, the Buffalo News, and I worked there for almost 5 years. And then Jordan would like come to town and be like, why do you need to work? Can you just quit your job? And I'm like, I'm like actually really good at my job.
Yeah, she was.
And that was a really hard transition for me, was stepping away from that part of my identity to become a support team for him, because I had a lot of pride in who I was and in that area of my identity. And I worked really hard, and I had to like step back, and it took a lot of headbutting and grinding because I really wanted to keep working.
That was early on in the marriage.
That was
even before the marriage
period, because we had to come to the conclusion that I couldn't stay in Buffalo. And that was tough because, in the same way that he was somebody in the wrestling community at that point, I was someone in my own community, especially like, in the sports fields. Like I was walking the sidelines at football games, basketball games. And I was a reporter. So I knew all the athletes, and I had like my own little community that I knew, and everyone was like, "You're leaving? What?
Yeah.
Who is this guy? We don't even know this guy."
You're going to Nebraska at that?
Yeah. You're going to Nebraska. Like, this is your place. So that was hard at first to kind of let go and step into this new role. And there was a little bit of tears shed. I'm not really overly emotional, but I cried a lot over that.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
Yeah,
it was like, I remember being like, I'm somebody. Like, I know you're somebody, but I'm somebody.
I remember.
And it's super cool to see how God has used that to like change a lot of other people's lives through just seeing how we operate. But it wasn't easy in the beginning. Yeah,
I can imagine. I mean, I knew you had, the career path. I just didn't know how in depth it was at that point, but that would be tough. I mean, but at the same time is you knew what you wanted. Right. Yeah. It was, I kind of got peeled away. What's funny? I went to journalism school with, I don't know, a couple hundred people, and I don't know many of them that stepped away from their job to leave their job and support, be a wife or just a mom. I don't say just a mom, but like to leave their job, leave their career to pursue their family. And, I have people who I graduated with that are on Fox News. They're the lead investigative reporter at like the Wall Street Journal. Like my classmates did incredible things. Wow. So that was what was hard for me. I committed to this intense program, and then I got the job that I wanted to, and I was moving up, and then I was like, see you later. Yeah. See you guys. Is there a re-entry point for you? Or are you content now in this new direction? I mean, obviously Jordan, shared it with me, or, he wants to make another run at the Olympics, and then after that, he's like, we'll see what's next, kind of transition. Is that, I mean, you got babies. We'll get to all that, but. I feel like over the last 8 years since we had Beacon, because we got married and then I was pregnant in like 2 weeks. And I had fully planned on freelancing for the paper in Lincoln or doing something on the side. And I was so sick the first few months that I'm like, no, I'm not doing anything but laying on this couch. Yeah.
And then, you know, we traveled so much together, and we still do, that wouldn't have been able, like, we couldn't have done that if I would have went back to work. And I can't even imagine working now. And we're so much of a team. And I find a lot of fulfillment in like writing for social and, you know, collabing on stuff.
Yeah, your skill set's definitely plays to his world.
It's really worked out.
Yeah.
So I think eventually I always talk about writing a book. But I'm trying to be content in where I'm at right now.
Sure.
And not constantly, and that's tough, right? Because as in your role, you have to be like a little bit of both. But right now I'm working on just, you know, being happy where I'm at.
Sure. Yeah. Jordan, was it always, you know, since, you know, sophomore year or whatever in college, was it, I'm going to be a wrestler?
No.
No.
It wasn't, because like there was not a career of this at that time, or at least not a lucrative one. So like you kind of saw most of the guys, you say, okay, I'm going to wrestle one cycle and then I'm going to transition to MMA. That's kind of where we were trending at that particular time. It's like guys were making that transition over to UFC, and that was the more lucrative, the more appealing of the career paths. But plus also I think that I just didn't know what was possible, because no one had really done it for an extended period of time. And I didn't know if I was going to be winning. Like, it's easy to say in theory, like, I'll stick around. But if I wasn't winning, who wants to wrestle for a long time and not win? You know, it's hard to put a decade in and not make a team. Like, it's unlike any other sport where you can still be a star but not be a champion. And you can't really do that in wrestling. You're either the guy or you're just a guy.
Right.
And so it's really unique that way.
Better.
Yeah. I mean, guys are coexisting, but still, even so, like.
But on a personal level.
On a personal level, it's tough. Like, you're surviving. Like you got a salary and you're taking care of the cost of living, but you're not really thriving.
Yeah.
You're not really thriving. It's tough. Olympic sports are tough.
Yeah, for sure.
Tough.
I kind of see there's a parallel there. Obviously, fighters, you know, early on, most of them, I knew, you know, some fighters that were fighting the UFC and things of that nature. They were having to do a regular job to fund their career as a fighter, and they were some of the best there is. I see wrestling's kind of progressed at the top level a little past that, where a lot of these guys are getting paid, they're able to concentrate, but we're still just, you know,
still the tip of the iceberg. We're gonna get there. Like my very first World Team Trials, 2011, you know, juxtaposing with this year, 11 years later, my very first World Team Trials, I had made my own T-shirts. So I went to a graphic designer, Artifacts in Lincoln, Nebraska. Teresa Loken was the lady that helped me.
Good memory.
And I got my own shirts made, and they said "Got Doubles." Like, it was like the Got Milk commercial. It was "Got Doubles," and it had like a picture of me double legging someone on the back, and it said Team Burroughs. And at my first World Team Trials, so we were 2 days of trials. Saturday I made the team, and then Sunday was the second half of the weight classes making the team. And I had a big duffel bag with all of my T-shirts that I brought up that I had made. And I was just in the stands selling them.
Wow.
Like for like $20 a pop. Like, I'm in the stands like a scalper, like outside of the stadium. And so like when people would see like a crowd, like, what's going on over there? Oh, there's JB. He made the team. And so, what are you selling? T-shirts? I'll take one. And so like that was kind of the way in which I started.
Nobody's really doing shirts and stuff then.
No one even had room for me.
And you know, I don't know if you had some sort of vision, but he saved a bunch of kids' T-shirts, and I kept them in our closet. And it's crazy because Beacon fits in them now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Beacon wears the God Double shirt. And I made those in 2011.
That's incredible.
So it was wild. But yeah, man. So like the time frame in that era, it was completely different. Like my very first year out of college, I made about 80 grand. And 50 grand of that was just from winning the world championship. So that tells you what I made from everything else. It was only $30,000 outside of wrestling. And so that sponsors and wrestling tournaments and, you know, all those things, they didn't really exist at the time. I sat down with Adidas. There was a guy named
don't throw him under the bus like that.
Okay. I sat down with a rep from Adidas right after my senior year. So after I win the NCAA championship, they sit me down and they're like, hey, we want to sign you. And I'm like, sweet. And so I'm with Mark Manning at the time. He was like, this is huge. Like, Adidas, they're a big company. And I wore Adidas because Nebraska's Adidas. Right, so I had worn Adidas for the last 5 years. So I respected and appreciated those guys. I actually won my first world championship in Adidas. And So he sit me down and they're like, hey, JB, we want to make you an offer because we want you to be a part of Team Adidas. So I'm thinking big money, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at all these NFL, NBA players like with Adidas. I'm like, I'm about to make big bucks. And then he sat me down and he offered me $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month. It was only $12,000 total. And I was like, man, $1,000 a month? I'm like, this is a scholarship check. This is nothing.
Yeah.
And so I just remember leaving that diner that day after having that meeting with him. And I was like, wow.
I mean, at some point, I mean, that probably is that moment where you're like, I'm going to have to do something different.
Bro, I was like, it's hard, man. Like, even now, like, I watch a lot of guys that transition to the UFC.
Yeah, it's got to be enticing.
Like, man, these guys are making $500,000 a fight.
Yeah.
500-600 grand. I'm like,
it's hard.
I could go fight and make this. I can make $1 million in one fight, 1-2 fights.
Right.
You know, and it'd be and win.
Right.
So, but again, we don't really think about the money as much as we just think about the impact.
Sure.
I mean, the money is like a fleeting thought like that.
Yeah.
Like, shoot. I could. Well, I don't think like that, but he's like.
She was like, but yeah, you could also get kicked in the head.
Yeah.
And I remind him that he is beloved in wrestling.
Yeah,
like,
true.
You know, you're like a big fish in a little pond. Not like wrestling's a little pond, but it's a much smaller pond than the UFC.
He's like, hold on a minute.
A whole lot of ponds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we really value the wrestling community.
Yeah.
We really do. And we love it.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I saw a clip saying absolutely not on the MMA stuff, so I brought it up earlier.
It's hard. I joke that like I would never.
It's tough.
But I don't ever want him to feel like if that's something that he feels he can.
Okay, I want to do it.
You better watch what you say.
If that's something that he feels like he wants to conquer for the right reasons or wants to, try his hand at, then I can be convinced. But I'm always asking him like, why?
Sure.
And then that fleeting thought comes up because I can make money really quick. And I'm like, no.
Right. That's not
our priority.
Yeah.
And I haven't had enough signs that that's where we should be.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have either, really.
It's a tough decision for anyone, but it is lucrative.
I just kind of
very lucrative.
I want to showcase my skill set.
That's huge.
That's for me.
That's like, huge. Yeah.
Because wrestlers are the toughest athletes in the world.
Right.
And I've watched a bunch of guys that I've trained, competed with, transition and find success. I'm like, I can do this. Mm-hmm. So like there's time where I'm watching and I'm moving and I'm shaking. I'm like, man, I'd be so good at this. I feel like I could be superb at this.
And then you watch someone get kicked in the jaw.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. In wrestling, you don't go out there afraid of getting pinned.
Right.
Right. So it's like in fighting, you know you're going to take a couple of shots, but the best guys aren't necessarily getting. Who knows, right? There's not a ton of research on it. Anyway, long story short, I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I'm almost 34 years old.
I understand.
That ship's probably sailed for me.
Right. Was that? I guess was that double leg off the stage with Askren just to hey, I could do this?
Yeah, I mean.
Because
he loves putting on a show.
Of course,
and we love that.
I wanted to get him off the stage.
Of course. I was gonna say the thing of it was like I felt like this was I could. Yeah. It was like one of those, because at that time Ben was in the top.
Yeah, he was hot, bro.
Very hot.
He was hot.
I thought it was a great approach to the match.
And he made a lot of money for like that Jorge. I think he made like $600,000 for that Jorge Masvidal fight.
But you know what?
6 seconds. So I'm like, yo, listen, I could go out there and get knocked out still make this.
But you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it if you.
But so here's and everybody knows.
Here's the problem. I'm such a competitor that if I win, I'm gonna be like, damn, that was easy. I'm going back.
Yeah.
And if I lose,
you're always
I'm like, I can't go out like that.
And
I need another one.
It'll only be one fight. And I'm like,
she's like, you can't just
you know better.
There's
you
no
know
such
better.
thing as one fight.
But I think because of my success on the mat and who I am, like they would try to build me up and give me winnable fights. Right? So they're not going to put me in with freaking Khabib my very first match. They're going to put me in with an individual that they know I can beat, that has a relatively solid name, but they know I can find success.
Okay, but here now you just, and I'm sorry, we've got off.
This is what happens.
We've gone off on
rails,
a tangent,
right?
but I gotta ask this question. So because we're thinking money and we're thinking, what's actually more reasonable and possible.
Mm-hmm.
I can almost guarantee you there's massive money behind you wrestling Khabib.
Yeah.
And I think he'd be down to do it. He says he's one of the best wrestlers in the world.
I would beg to differ, but I'm sure he's tough.
But I'm saying, he's known in the MMA world as the wrestler.
As the best wrestler.
Khabib's walked away.
He has from fighting.
Yeah, he's retired.
But he's from fighting. But he still rolls. He's got his own fighting league. I'm just saying there's avenues. And there's eyes and pay-per-views.
And there's
definitely ways. Like
we would never turn. I don't
wrestling Ben Askren up until that point. Wrestling Ben Askren was the most lucrative wrestling match that I ever had. Like single match. The easiest match of my career, not the easiest match of my career, but one of the easier matches of that magnitude and of that level. I ended up making the most money just because of the name that Ben Askren brought, the excitement that it brought to the sport, the event itself, like that was major for the sport of wrestling.
Absolutely,
it was a super cool event.
Well, look at Clay and look at Uriah Faber. You this year coming out there into Vegas, all kinds of eyes. I'm just saying, like I don't know. Again, as a wrestling fan and as a fan of yours, I would love to see some of those matchups because it's this Jake Paul versus whatever. Yeah. It's this one-off stuff.
It's intriguing.
Yeah, I want to fight
future.
though.
That's
the thing. Like
I was trying to get him out of the fight.
Wrestling. I want to experience a fight. That's it.
Want doesn't mean need.
But yeah, I know I don't need it because right there.
I get it.
I don't want to take any additional shots. I don't want to get my body. I've already taken a ton of damage and a lot of miles on my body. So I'm like, shots to the head, maybe lucrative now, but at what expense?
Exactly.
Right? Because let's say I do go out there and I get hit with a clean one and I'm knocked unconscious. Now all of a sudden I'm like, man, I got a couple $100,000, but
what's it matter?
What did that really mean in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, and fighting's different in the sense. Wrestling, anybody can be beat, but typically not.
No.
But anybody can be knocked out. Right. Anybody can be caught. You got a puncher's chance. Yeah.
Well, you lose a wrestling match, you got pushed out or taken down.
Right.
And you go have dinner with your family afterwards. You lose a fight, something's broken, you got knocked out, choked out, tapped out, and you go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Almost every time.
So
even the winners go to the hospital.
Yeah. It's not pleasant.
And I think we've gotten to a certain point of success where like what is money providing us?
Sure.
And especially to someone who Jordan isn't like a big spender. So are we just putting more money away? Like what's the motivation for this money?
Sure.
Money's great, but what's it worth at the end of the day if you're doing something that puts you at risk and you're already successful? We're already comfortable. We already enjoy things in life.
Well, I think probably speaking to Jordan though, and you probably get this because you were an athlete. Yes, money is a great motivator, but it's the competition. It's the
for sure.
Can I?
Yeah.
It's
that. And that's more of it. That's more of it.
That's what I feel.
So I take the money part away.
Right.
So at least it's not. And that's why I said I would not be completely opposed to him doing it if he felt like if there were enough reasons and you were like, I can't walk away from this.
Right.
Well,
the money to me is not.
The money's great, but here's what really drives me, and some of it is a little bit of ego. Is I'm like, I'm one of the toughest combat sports competitors of all time. Like I feel like in my heart.
Absolutely.
But only the wrestling community knows that, right? So I'm like, there's a much broader audience that I feel like I could show my skills, my heart, my athleticism to,
right?
That wrestling deserves,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm just like, the fact that it's almost like the artist that no one ever sees their work, right? So it's like that's what I'm like, man. This guy is phenomenal. He's Leonardo da Vinci, but he lives in a small village in Africa, and no one's really ever seen it, right? So he toils away on these huts, and it's amazing, and it's it's tremendous, intricate and artistic
and then
work,
I knock
but
him down a few notches.
it's not in Rome, right? So it's
Sure.
I mean I love what I do. Wrestling is always going to be my thing. I'm just like, man, what if I could showcase these skills to the world on a different platform? Like, what would that look like?
Sure.
That you see a lot. But,
Well,
but there's phases. I feel like you are extra distracted by that in the off season.
That makes sense.
During the rest, like we haven't talked about fighting since wrestling.
Well, because I don't love fighting.
Yeah.
Right,
I love fighting.
Right.
And that's another thing I
love wrestling.
remind him.
Yeah.
Like I guarantee you will not miss fighting.
I respect the art form of fighting, but you know, when I'm in a fight, I feel like there's a very different element of what could possibly happen to you. Like in wrestling, you're like, what can this guy do? He can't do anything to me that I won't allow him to do to me.
Yeah.
You know, but in fighting, you're like, man, anything could happen here.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry to derail us like that, but
good.
at the same time, I think a lot of people want to know that, and and just to speak to a little bit what you're saying there.
Some gloves in the back.
Yeah, you're right. yeah, but
start today.
I think the fight world, and I know you know this, but it like you said, it's that world that you feel like you could make an impact and get respected at your level, at this level. But I know that world respects you to the highest.
And I'm always
she reminds me of that.
Yeah.
And they do. Every MMA fight I've ever been to, like, ton of gratitude and praise and so that makes me feel good.
Well,
I've mastered my discipline.
Yeah, and they're studying you.
My discipline.
They're studying you to get better at what they do.
Right.
That's here's what I want to do. I want to help fighters sharpen their wrestling.
Oh man, there's
like
huge
that's
market there.
Best market for me where I can save my body, be ingratiated in the space, but also like maintain a certain level of integrity. I'm not like jumping into this like, hey, I want to try what you guys do. I don't really love it, but I'm trying to like be famous.
Especially because of your style. It's not like your style is like this so complex. You're not doing your style is
it's really good for fighting.
Perfecting the basics.
Yeah.
So I think for fighters it would be awesome.
Absolutely.
And we've seen it. We've seen the success of people coming to train too.
So transitioning to the next question there.
Back
on track, but it fits real well. What is it like being married to a wrestler like Jordan at that level? Because we just kind of spent 15 minutes talking about the possibilities. What does that carry?
I think we have grown so much in how we approach different situations, different opportunities that are brought our way. We've learned a lot in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. We've been really good at saying no to things, which is a blessing, right? To be able to say no means you're getting a lot of opportunity. So we've been really good at that. I think there's a whole level that we could talk about of being married, and then there's a whole other level of parenting, and it's just a different world. I think the best quality that someone can have that is married to someone who has this much, this many things required of them, and is like a basically, like you say, like a champion of the people, is to be flexible.
Yeah.
I think
it's good.
I think I'm really good at being flexible, and I'm not really good at talking about what I'm really good at, but I know I'm really flexible.
You're flexible.
That's
I
good.
would agree.
That's
I
good.
would agree with that.
I don't get very upset when plans change quickly. I can kind of pivot on the fly for the most part. With the kids throw like a little wrench in our plans sometimes, but I think I just have learned to adjust, to adapt. When we're at a camp all day long, I don't get upset. I don't get upset when the line is extremely long for autographs, because I've learned perspective is everything, right? Like I remember reminding you early on that there's probably a lot of wrestlers who, don't have anyone asking for their autograph. There's not a line full of kids who are buying your shoes, who, eventually that money in one way or another ends up in our bank account.
Right.
So I try to be really grateful for our platform. And people, the wrestling community is great. I would not rather be in any community of fans and friends They're awesome. I've learned so much about life through just like sitting in the corner of a gym for 8 hours with another mom whose kid is just at wrestling camp. And she's just telling me about life. And I'm sitting there mind blown. She's probably excited just to sit, you know, with me and the kids because we are who we are to you. But there's just so much to learn from everybody we meet. And I'm really grateful for wrestling.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Going the other way, what's it like having like Lauren in your corner, Jordan, like someone that is, because just being a wrestling dad and a wrestling coach, there's a lot that we require.
It's a lot,
you know,
it's a lot.
What's that like?
I think one of the things that like Lauren didn't mention, but that she does well is she's very flexible, but she also puts her foot down at the right time. So there's certain dynamics in where things have to shift, where she's like, okay, I'm going to do this, but when it's my time, like now it's my time.
I'm not a pushover.
Right. So she's like, no, we did this way. We did this your way. Now I need this, or the kids need this, or we need to go here.
Makes sense.
And so that kind of keeps me in a place, in the position where family is in the forefront of what we do.
Yeah.
And we always try to maintain and balance what this looks like, because sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Right.
And there are certain times where, like, for example, going up to New York City for Final X, like typically we travel together, but it's really hard. Like, I got 4 kids, I've got a family, I've got to drive up, we got to find a place to park the car. You know, we've got to get all the bags out, get them on the cart with the bellhop, get them up to the room, go to Whole Foods, pack the fridge, like all these different things where I'm like, man, I got to wrestle tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
So like, you're trying to maintain and balance family life while still trying to be the best wrestler in the world.
Right.
And so she gives me a lot of freedom to kind of step away a little bit and say, hey, you know, do your thing, be at peace, get your mind right, get focused, get ready for tomorrow. But there are other times where she like, I need help.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
That's
I need
good.
you to go park the car.
I do
need
that
you
a
to
lot too.
run to Whole Foods
Yeah.
and grab some wipes and diapers for the baby. Like all these little things where most guys, they don't really have to deal with that. I'm looking at the young kids that are there. Let's say Yanni Diakomahalas, for example. He probably doesn't he stays in his room. People bring everything to him. He's watching Netflix and hanging out, lounging with his feet up until he's got to compete.
Yeah, it's different.
You know, me, I'm all over the place, making sure the kids are good, taking them to breakfast,
different.
going to Central Park, going to get an outfit for after the event, you know, doing an interview. Like, so there's a whole lot that kind of comes with this lifestyle.
And I think anyone who's got a really big calling, you know, they've got a lot going on that people don't even consider.
100%.
Like if you're a parent to multiple kids, you know that the day you're just juggling, you're constantly juggling. And I think we've really, I don't know about mastered, but we've learned to, I heard it put one way, like life is about juggling glass balls, I think, and knowing, or glass, I don't know if it was balls, but some of them are glass and you have to know which ones you can drop because you can drop some of the balls and keep going and things, you know, look flawless. But if you drop a glass one, you know, it's everything's kind of affected. And I think that a lot of times we don't realize it because we're just in a state of chaos. But then after a week, you look back and we're like, okay, well, we handled that pretty well.
Yeah.
Even though there was so much going on, I think we've become sort of masters at like managing chaos.
Not dropping the glass ball.
Keeping the glass balls in flow and, you know, letting a lot of the other ones drop.
That's good.
Which we're learning, right?
Sure.
Like
on the fly.
There's things that we're working on right now to be better at, you know, be better communicators with different people, be better communicators with each other. But I think often we're going so fast that we forget to like realize all these things that we actually do a really good job at.
Right. Yeah, it's good. Wrestling teaches us a lot about life, and you coming from a wrestling background, you know, for my wife and I kind of, I know it sounds weird, but our marriage has a lot of wrestling dynamics. You know, I mean, I understand what it means to be successful in this area of my life, so I've been able to apply those things. You know, with the communication, being vocal about what I'm going through. You know, having you know, a partner a team that I can trust in, and being disciplined and not quitting when it's hard. Those things honestly are from my wrestling roots. Do you guys find that same?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we fortunately were raised in homes where our dads taught us a lot about discipline.
Mm.
Hers was strictly from wrestling. Mine was through wrestling, right? So her dad imposed all the principles from wrestling. I actually wrestled.
Right.
So yeah, I think the way we operate is a lot of what we've learned was from athletics, because our parents both worked hard, provided us with quality lifestyles. We grew up in the suburbs, went to solid schools. And so athletics and schoolwork, academics was how we kind of positioned ourselves with difficulty and learned to be efficient.
We learned how to overcome struggle through sport because we didn't have hard lives.
Sure.
We didn't grow up, wondering where the next meal was going to come from and if our lights were going to be on. We didn't grow up. Fortunately, we were very blessed to grow up in middle-class families. And so when that happens, and we're working on this with our kids, when that happens, then we have to create the hardship.
Right.
So, well, okay, we're not going to send our kids to rough schools. We're not going to send them into a rough community. But what can we control that teaches them that they can push past what they think their limits are?
Yeah, it's so
and
huge.
that, for us, is sports. It's doing pull-ups at the end of the night when they're tired. It's doing push-ups. It's, when we're on the road and they're hungry, begging for snacks, it's like, you're going to wait an hour.
Right.
We're not going to feed you all the time when you say you're hungry. So I think, we're like you said, we're learning, but we think that is going to show some fruit someday. We hope, we pray.
Oh, for sure.
It will.
Yeah. In life, there's no getting out of suffering, but, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, and the psychology behind it is that oddly enough, you can get better at suffering. It never gets great, but you learn to endure it differently.
Right.
And so
totally,
we just like you're talking about, we raised our kids in a home where things were pretty easy.
Yeah.
But we were able to give them opportunities for chosen suffering and to, like you said, pull-ups, push-ups, things of that. Wrestling was one of those things for my son that, again, the kid grew up with anything he wanted, relatively, but wrestling was a place where he had to learn to suffer.
Right.
And I can guarantee the fruit of his life will be based in that suffering.
Yeah.
I have a theory that all great things come through suffering.
Yeah. And wrestling is, learning to deal with constant discomfort. I wrestled as a kid.
Okay.
And even like just wrestling in the kitchen with my brothers, I was like, stop. Jordan does it to me now. I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. And I think there's just so many lessons.
Yeah. My wife and I have had many wrestling matches, just like it's the wrestling thing, we go to arm drag, to hug,
right? Yep.
You
that's
gotta touch each other.
The constant wrestler greeting is 2-on-1 hug, arm drag.
Every day Beacon comes home from school, or he's like, if he doesn't have practice, he's like, can we wrestle? Can you wrestle me, Mom? Dad, can you it's just his desire to constantly be engaged in some sort of battle of wills.
That's good. So speaking of your children, you have 4 beautiful babies. I had 2, and that was a lot. Yeah. So 4 amazing kids.
Put us over the edge.
What is it like in a Burrow home? I mean, is it you're a wrestling family. Is it wrestling matches from the beginning to the end? What's it like?
Yeah, I mean, it's
like
chaos.
It's like
kind of organized chaos.
Sure.
We do a good job of. The kids are into their routine. They've got activities there in school. The babies are at home, and Banner's growing up, but he stays in one place typically. Now he's crawling, so he's starting to get a little bit more mobile. Rise is establishing a personality, so she's doing a good job of keeping everyone entertained. She's very lovable.
She is.
But I think, honestly, having our first kid was the hardest transition for me, 0 to 1, because I had never really spent any time around kids.
Okay.
And so I went from, I never changed a diaper before I had kids. Not a single diaper. Never babysat.
I don't know if you held a baby.
Nothing.
So you were like that guy that was like, nah, I'm good, when somebody offered their,
maybe a kid. Oh, you did just occasionally.
No, I wasn't like, nah, I'm good. Like, I liked babies.
Okay, that's good. At least.
I just never really spent any time with them.
Yeah, you were training, doing your thing.
So like, I was always doing my thing. And then, so marriage kids all within 1 year. So I go from being
and you started coaching,
and I coached that year.
Ooh.
So it was a crazy transition for me because I'm going, my cup was overflowed.
Oh, yeah.
Because I went from best in the world, fully self-serving and selfish, and everyone accommodating my needs, to coaching a college team. So having 35 guys that I was responsible for, having a wife, and then also having a newborn.
Wow.
Yeah,
So it was
2014.
It was
really
really hard time for me. I was like, what did I do? Like, I asked for this.
Right.
Like, I prayed for all these things, and now I'm like overwhelmed. I don't even have the energy to really get through this time. But you know, it was a time of growth and character development for me, because I really started to understand how to, every kid I get better.
Right.
I become a better father with every child. I'm a little bit more relaxed.
He barely raises his voice
a little
anymore.
less impatient, a little more loving and understanding, a little more available. Plus, as I get closer to careers end, like, that's one of the things I look forward to. I know, right, that people are like, well, don't look forward to the end of your career because then you won't focus on finishing strong. But I'm like, I look forward to the day where I don't have to train every day. So now I can focus this energy on my kids, where I'm not away for 10, 14 days at a time.
Yeah.
Where I can keep them consistent in whatever their habits are so they can become great at something. And so consistency and rhythm is something that I look forward to when my career is over, so then I can help raise up my children to be great at something.
That's good. That's real good.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the reason why we go a lot of places together, is because we try to maintain that consistency to a certain point, because it's hard right now. It's hard. Like, we get home from this road trip, and then he leaves in like 3 days to go out to Colorado, and I bring my kids to Buffalo so that we can spend time with family. So we try to keep, although things outside, our nuclear family, the schedule changes a lot, we try to make sure that they feel a lot of consistency within our own home, within us, and their siblings.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because going back to, I think everything wrestling is a version of life. When you first start wrestling, it's terrible. I mean, and even as you've did it for years, no day is easy, right?
Yeah.
But I think that is life, right? And especially when you're talking about you get married, you have a kid immediately. It's the story of my wife and I as well. That's tough. I mean, it's tough to be married, and then you add the children on top of it. But as you mentioned, Jordan, and you guys have said, you're what, 9 years?
Almost 9 years. 9 years in October.
So so you're 9 years into this. So you're getting that level, like, as a wrestler, where you know what you're doing. Yeah. You know how but you're learning new techniques. Right. You're getting better.
You're communicating better with your.
Well, I mean, look at how long it took me to become a master wrestler. I started wrestling at 6 years old. I was a world champion at 22. So 16 years. I've only been in this for 9. So I get another 7 years before, like, I've essentially mastered this in a sense. And so, I think it's constant refinement. I think the one thing about us is that we're always seeking knowledge and ways in which to improve.
And you have to desire to be better. And that's the same with wrestling, right? Like, I wish there were like a marriage handbook that people would talk about that with. Because, like, you have to desire to refine yourself year after year. You have to be selfless. Yeah. And it's not easy, right? Like, we get better
there's no
at it
scoreboard, right? Like, you can't really quantify what a quality marriage or a win looks like, right? Like, you just see the fruit of success in marriage, right? So it's like, okay, we communicate well. We're still attracted to one another. Like, we have successful kids. Like, we're mentors to other young couples. Like, we've been good stewards of our resources. Like, all of those things are the fruit, but you can't win. Like, in wrestling, you get your hand raised. So there's like a tangible way to see, like, okay, I worked on this move, I improved, I executed it in a match, and I won because of it. Like, you can't really tell that in this, right? And there's no retirement, right? It's forever. Like, retirement is death. Yeah. So it's just different, but
for sure.
But it's good.
But winning covers all. So just because you won doesn't mean you were doing everything right.
That's true.
It means you won.
Well, you want somebody to give you positive feedback, right? So like, the same way that I desire a coach to tell me, hey, listen, that was a good win, but here's how we can improve. is the same way. Like we kind of try to communicate with one another when there's not even a difficulty. We're just saying like, hey, I need this.
Yeah, I
or
think
like when this happens.
And we've talked about this before, but I think one of our best qualities in our marriage is that we talk about everything.
Yeah.
Like we talk nonstop about everything. And sometimes we get frustrated with the kids because they talk so much and we can't even talk anymore half the time. But that's something that we always are desiring to do. Like I never feel like I'm not involved in everything he's got going on. And I also feel on the flip side of that he's very involved in the parenting. So I think it's just communication, but not just like, tell me when you're upset. Tell me when you're happy. It's like, well, tell me how your day went. Tell me like about that match. Tell me about practice. What are you learning? Like I'm very interested in all those things. And I don't know if it's because I just love wrestling. I was raised in wrestling, but I just like to know what's going on.
Yeah,
and he's the same way.
It's nice. It's nice when someone's like thoroughly enjoys and is invested in your occupation.
Yeah,
sure. Nice. I made asked the question last night, and you guys made a great response to it. But in a lot of marriages, you get to the point where you're talking at them instead of with them. Yeah. And I feel like you guys articulated that. That's an important thing. I don't know if you know exactly how important that is as a spouse to be genuinely interested in what your spouse is doing and not coming to him going, if you can, Jordan, I mean, obviously, and this is not rare. This happens a lot. You could go to Jordan and be like, you should have done this. Why didn't you wrestle like this? Why? That's what a lot of spouses do. Yeah. They think they're doing a service. And
I've heard that too. Yeah. Like I've and me and some of the other wives joke like that. I think I was just talking to who were we with? Kirsten Delagnev. And sometimes we are in the stands. Like,
of course.
Oh my goodness, why aren't you? But I know it's deeper than that. I'm not, and that was one of the things we said. I'm like, I know I'm not out there. I know it's not that easy. And you get good at communicating. So like, even if I'm thinking that, I'm setting it up like, why were you approaching it this way? Like, and I am genuinely curious. Like, why was the approach like this? Where the heck was your double leg?
Why do you stink?
I follow up with like you said, I'm pretty direct with what I think. But yeah, I know that it's never that easy. I'm not the one out there.
Well, it's the same thing when it comes to parenting or anything, though. If Jordan comes home, like, why did you let the kids do this?
Yeah.
It's not like you didn't.
Why is the house a disaster?
Yeah, it's not like you didn't think about those things. But I do. I mean, admittedly, I've done those things to my wife. I'll come home, be like, what you do all day? That's the worst thing you can ask your wife. I mean, the absolute worst, But pretty bad. It's coming back to that. Sometimes I talk at her instead of with her.
Yeah.
And we have discussed her and I think as married couples, this is a healthy thing to do is to get and have conversations.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to necessarily be leading anyone anywhere in that relationship at that time. There is times for that.
Right.
Yeah.
But just having those conversations, don't stop dating him. Like you said, even the attraction thing. I am so glad that after 22, 23 years into my marriage here, I'm just as attracted to my wife, if not more than I was when we met. But that's a constant refinement, constant work.
Right. It does take work. I think people forget that. Like you have to work on connecting. I think that's the easiest way to put it. You have to work on connecting, and it's hard some days now with kids. Like sometimes it'll be like the whole day will be like, good morning. Usually we get all the kids ready, and then we look at each other and we're like, hey,
like, no. Stop talking. Go to bed. Mom and dad are gonna hang out now.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. But you're people of faith, and I want to talk about that for just a second. But the word even talks about kind of the arrangement that it's obvious our relationship with Him, but then it's our relationship with our spouse, and then our children, and that as a family dynamic gets tough sometimes. I know my wife and I have gotten that out of order a lot.
Yeah, I think that's probably a very common thing in marriage. Because they need so much,
right?
Or we think they need.
We think they do.
We think they do.
Right.
I think it's because of your nature.
Yeah, that too.
This has become what you're purposefully pursuing at this point is like raising up children that are of good manners and respectful, and just really good individuals. But like for us, we still need you. Right. And so like we do our thing in the world. We come home, like we're thinking about all the same things with the kids, but we're also thinking about you.
But we're moms are neurotically thinking about the kids.
But you're always thinking about
like
the
even
kids.
right now, I'm like, I hope Rise did not open that back door. I hope she's not on the deck. Like my mind is constantly protect like mother hen. Like,
I think it's our job to. Here's the tough thing. You want to be desired, right? Like as a man. Absolutely. So it's like, I want you to want me. I want you to be desire to be romantic with me.
Absolutely.
Like I want all of these things. But they're not necessarily thinking like that. Right. So it's like the first thing on my mind is the last thing on her mind.
Yeah, sure. We're thinking like, of course we desire you. We're married to you. What?
I'm like, well,
no,
you got to display that to me.
It's different.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not a guy that's just like, oh yeah, I know it's okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am, right? You get it.
To
but
be at certain points.
I think also you start to recognize that in those moments that it's our jobs to make ourselves desirable.
Right.
And by being loving, by being gentle, and by being, charismatic and involved. I think all those things kind of create, but it's a lot of work too.
It is,
because you want it easy,
right?
You want it to be easy for you, and you want someone just to be like, oh, you're home.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like the kids, like you want that from your wife too.
Yeah.
The kids are happy. Dad's home.
Right.
And she's just like, shh, 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 in the kitchen, like, hey, I need you to put the clothes back in the dryer for the kids. And you're like, oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hi to you too.
Right. For sure.
But that's real. Hard because that also has, like, we have to do that for you occasionally. Like I heard it put this way once, like your life is not your vacation. Your life is how your wife greets you at the door.
That's good.
Like every day.
Yeah.
So I think it's a partnership. You have to be great at both.
It is, and it's a big deal.
It's a give take.
It is a give take, and I think men and women, as you put it, are so different in the way we think. I try to explain this to my wife, but we got the whole men are from this, women from this.
Yeah.
Like our communication and our thought process is so different. But there is something. The word says this. The Bible says that a man feels loved when he's honored, right? And that there's a woman's supposed to love her husband and by honoring him, and a man's supposed to love his wife as Christ loved the church. Like women feel when they're secured and safe and they're appreciated, right? We get that the honor thing. If that honor thing's not there, and honor for us is one of those things where, like I said, it starts at the door.
Right.
Did you not? I was just gone.
Yeah.
I just did this.
Yeah.
I look at the house. Look at what I've provided.
Well, yeah.
It's all undertoned. Yeah. But that stuff, if it's not communicated, that can become a huge issue, and you don't even know why you're upset. But internally, it's like, I feel dishonored.
You're upset.
I'm upset.
And society kind of tricks us into thinking that that's like tricking us into thinking that being a servant in that way is a bad thing.
Right.
And two, to think that showing that like reverence to your husband is second rate.
Right.
That you're not showing like this, like it's this loss of pride or something like that.
Yeah,
where
you're like subservient.
Yeah, you're subservient in that.
But like,
it's so backwards.
But willing
from a biblical perspective.
Right.
So willingness to surrender, like vulnerability, is not weakness.
No.
Right. No. It's like, if I make myself vulnerable, if I surrender and sacrifice, on my own accord and by my own will, like that doesn't make me weak.
Right.
I think that makes you powerful.
Absolutely.
Well, and
it
in
makes
the
you strong, and
yeah,
it helps to benefit everyone involved.
Absolutely.
It's like, because like when you honor me, I in turn, desire to surrender for you.
Right. Well, it makes you feel
family.
Anyone who's being served,
and so it's like,
is feeling a display of love, a display of affection. I mean, that's never a negative thing. But I think it's hard for people to humble themselves and freely give that service.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it's you got to be introspective, or you've got to have a quality of faith. Because there's certain times where like it's just hard. Life's hard, right? There's a lot going on. Baby was just born. I got to take the other 3 while you lay locked down with the baby. We're not romantic at all at that particular time. I'm trying to keep the house clean. I'm trying to wrestle. I'm trying to, answer emails. I'm trying to make sure the kids are at school on time. And so like you go through these lull stages where you don't feel honored, you don't feel appreciated, and you're the one that's doing all the work, right? So now it's no more give and take. Like, it's all give, all give.
Right.
And so in those moments, it's easy for you to say, man, this stinks.
Right.
You know, you get into that pity mode where you're like, man,
it's a spiral.
This isn't what it's all cracked up to be. But I think that in those moments, that's when you have to either be an individual that's just extremely committed, disciplined, for all things I've learned from wrestling,
right?
Or you've got to be an individual that has an established faith where you're like, this is right because it's right.
Right.
And so
because it's Christ-like.
Right. And this is the way in which he will honor me and our marriage is by, you know, understanding that there are moments where I'm going to have to be sacrificial.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to surrender and be selfless and think of my family first. And I think everyone thrives because of it. You know, so it's like when I'm in places and people honor our marriage or they honor my kids and their behavior, like all that's just consistent effort over time.
Right.
Right. But people celebrate your level of competition or your athleticism a lot more than they celebrate your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no one says, everyone's like phenomenal wrestler, but no one really is like, great, you have a great marriage, right?
Yeah,
like
we get that a lot.
We get that often, but not as much as people tell me about wrestling.
Oh,
about the sport of wrestling.
That's
right, because marriage is a really hard thing. Right. So it's like everyone can't be a world or Olympic champion, but everyone's probably going to get married or a large part. So like, what you want to teach is like less wrestling, more life.
Yeah.
But people know that because they are in this is going to be more difficult. They're like, I know I can't do that.
Yeah.
I think I can do this, but this is also really hard. So it's just crazy
because that's I feel like this last camp stretch was kind of a transition from you doing more wrestling to doing wrestling and teaching people life stuff.
That's good.
Which I think was really, really was received really well.
Yeah, I had fun. So typically, like, I'll go and I'll teach wrestling moves. I'll break down a bunch of technique, and I did at this past couple of weeks. But intertwined within these wrestling matches are stories about here's why this is important for me, or here's why this event kind of helped mold and shape me, or let me tell you about the opportunity that you guys have all been presented because of you're embarking on this journey in this great sport that's going to teach you so much about life.
Yeah.
So no matter who you are at this very point in time, like at some point you're going to be someone that people rely upon.
That's good.
And so everything that you're going to learn in this sport is going to help refine you through that process. Good. So you're going to be a much better individual on the other side. And like for a long time, I never did that because I'm like, people just want to see me wrestle. They just want to learn double leg, single leg, high crotch, head block defense. Yeah. But now I'm like, I'm going to teach what I want. And what I want to teach is how to be an individual of integrity. Because if you have character, like that's success.
That's everything.
It doesn't no matter what you do on the wrestling mat, if you're an individual based on character and truth, you're successful.
Yeah.
And you're a champion. And so that's why I'm kind of transitioning from wrestling. Like anyone can teach you moves, but everyone's not going to pour into you about life. And so that's why I want to be that individual and that's what you really don't see from a lot of wrestlers.
Right.
Like if you look around the sports landscape period, everyone's posting their cars, their jewelry, their vacations. And that's pretty much it. So for me, I'm trying to yes, I've found success, but I want you to see the mindset which helped me be fruitful in this sport instead of just the fruit. Everyone just shows the fruit. Well, it's well, how do I get from being this 115-pound kid at this suburban elementary school in South Jersey to driving a Ferrari and wearing a iced out Cuban necklace?
Right.
It's no one ever really shows kind of that process and the fire. So it's tricky, and I don't want those guys to desire the wealth, the success. I want them to desire the process, the refinement. Which is
hard because a lot of times you're just putting little deposits in because you're not there. It's hard to get to that maturity.
I never had an epiphany, aha, damn, I'm really good now moment. It was just constant work, just constant toiling every single day, just going to practice, lifting 3 times a week, finding harder training partners, running as fast as I could on every sprint, lifting as much weight as I possibly could, just small competitions daily. Right. And then just chipping away at it, at it. Eventually you get better.
Back and you're like,
and then you get better.
Wow.
Yeah, you look back and you're like,
we've come a long way.
And there's certain moments in there where you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe I beat that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I was watching that guy.
Yeah.
He was way better than me. Or last time I wrestled with him, he beat me by 7 or 8 points.
Right.
I beat that dude.
Yeah. And that's life,
You
right?
know? So,
Yeah,
and that's
that's
life,
so
right?
That's life.
That was like our road trip.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that place is beautiful.
Well,
Like,
well,
look, we're almost home.
So that's why I love driving, because you get to you see the chipping away, right? You look at the map, it says Post Falls, Idaho is 1,700 miles away, and then 1,500, and then 1,200,
right,
and then 800, and all of a sudden you see Welcome to Post Falls, right? So like you constantly are just chipping away at something, and you can accomplish it in short order. And I think for me, that's I love the ability to see the progress of my work.
That's good.
It was cool. He one thing that he made all the kids go give their mom and dad a hug at camp,
awesome.
and I thought that was super cool.
Well, I'm glad you're doing that, because obviously that's my heart behind what we're doing here. That's why we're sitting here, because there is so much more to success than the medal. It's everything other than the medal. The trophy we talked about the trophy got you involved, but it's not why you stayed.
Yeah.
I tell my son, I tell him, you can, any mountain's yours, but you have to be willing to start at the bottom. Yeah. Right? Like he can climb it, he can do anything he wants, but he has to be willing to start at the bottom. And if he's willing to do that and take the steps, like you said, watching those miles tick down, anything's possible.
I saw this great graphic that just reminded me of that. I just saw it yesterday. There's this person at the top of the ladder, and are they rungs? They're called rungs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The rungs are real close together. And then there's the ladder next to him, and the guy's at the bottom, and the rungs are real far apart, and he can't even reach the first rung. And the point of it was, like, we all want to take this giant first step, but we can't even reach it if they're not little baby steps
That's
along
right.
the way.
That's
and
so
that person's
good.
already at the top, and the person on the other side can't even attempt to climb the ladder
Right.
because they want something big right away.
Yep.
So the little steps are so great.
A whole lot of little stuff that over time, consistent effort over a long period of time.
Well, yeah, for you, someone like you on the outside looking in, all of us look at the accolades. All of us look at your guys' marriage, and we say, oh, it's so good. They live in a great place. They got nice things. He's, travels the world. But your life is made up of a billion small decisions and a billion small competitions and wins and losses. Yeah. And nobody really wants to look at that, or at least they would rather just see it easy. Yeah. But nothing I'm guessing, but nothing that you all have has been easy.
There've been a few things, but yeah, most of it has been a lot, like you said, a lot of decisions. And we're not always great at making decisions quickly, but that's what when you become successful, people want decisions from you all the time. And that's really hard, because we, as you can see, we're very thoughtful about things. So we're not just throw a post up on Instagram. We're very thoughtful and strategic about what we do and what we say, the things that we put out there. So yeah, it's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of sitting back without the kids interrupting, which is late at night. And like, we got a lot of decisions to make all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a thing in life where I feel like we can grow at least at this point. But also, it's just the volume of it is like, it's impossible. Some days it's just like, you just have to ignore things for a little bit. But
well, you got to take some losses as well along the path. And I think that makes you a better parent, a better wife, a better husband, a better competitor. You know?
For sure.
For sure. The L's, they're not fun to experience, but definitely build character.
I just got a couple closing questions. I know you got to get back to babies and all this, and you got to get on the road. But what is success to you? I know it's a tough question, but what is success to each of you?
You can go first.
I mean, it's relative, right? I think success is contentment.
What? That's what I was gonna say.
Success is peacefulness. It's a stability of mind, knowing that you've given your all to a particular thing, and I always just want to be satisfied with my effort. And I always want to operate with courage. So if I can just give effort and courage, that'll give me peace.
That's good.
So I think success is just the reliance and a reassurance that you've given your maximum effort and that you operate with bravery, and that if it works out, phenomenal.
Right.
We're thankful. We express gratitude. And if it doesn't work out, then it just wasn't for us, and we still express gratitude.
That's good.
So yeah, I think, it's hard to define in terms of like tangible accomplishments, because there's still a lot of things that I want to do.
Right.
But even I've got, let's say, 2 more years left of wrestling, and I desire to win at least 1 more gold medal, right? 3 more. I'd like to win 3 more.
Right.
But let's say I win 0 more or no more. I would look back on my career and be like, damn, I didn't finish the way I wanted to. But it would be hard to look back at my career and think that it wasn't successful.
Right. That's
right.
And
so I think that there's a certain peacefulness in that I try to operate with, knowing that, like, listen, if I never even wrestled another match again, like, I'm certified.
That's good.
Right? Like I've done it.
Yep.
I've done it at a high level. Never cheated the game. Always did it the right way. Always gave my all to this sport. And so, yeah, I think success is just peace of mind, so you can move on enthusiastically at whatever you do.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, just contentment in your circumstances. But it's tough, because to be great, right, you have to have a desire for more.
Yeah.
You have to have this constant battle within yourself to push yourself. But I think contentment, a little bit of detachment from the world, will really set you up for
That's good.
success
Yeah.
and happiness, joy. Like, to be a little bit detached from the world. So
That's real
our
good.
friend Tervel, he said that when we were with him recently. He said he knew somebody who seemed really happy, and he just felt like at any point he would be like, God, just take me. I'm good.
That's good.
And I thought, man, as a mother whose kids are young, I'm just like, I can't wait to see them grow up.
Right.
Which I have such a strong desire for that. I want to
Don't
see
take
who
me.
they are.
I gotta see.
Don't take me. I'm not ready.
4 weddings.
Don't
They gotta
take
see
me.
4
I wanna
proms, 4
see all these
graduations.
things. I want to see all these things. I want to see them grow up. And I think that is a beautiful thing. I desire nothing more in this world than that. But to be like, I know what's more important. I'm gone.
Yeah.
Like, I'm detached. Take me.
That's good.
I think that's success. That's happiness, joy. And I also think, like, from a worldly perspective, finding a lot of purpose in your story. I think that's really important to us. Creating a story for your family that they can be proud of. That's like our legacy, our thing. I think that it's really important to have a story. And that your kids feel like they're a part of.
Right.
That they're a part of this grand story. And it's really cool. I think one of the parts of my childhood that made me feel really happy and really fulfilled was that I felt like my family was really special. Like, I felt like I had this really cool family. Everyone in town knew our name. My dad, my family had legacy at the school. We all really loved each other. We had a great network in our family. And I just felt like we were special. Like, we had a really cool story. And I hope that we're creating that for our family, like for our kids, that they're like, man, I love our story. Like, our story's really cool.
I'm proud to be a Burroughs.
I'm proud to be a Burroughs. Yeah. And I feel my place is here.
That's good.
Where I feel like that's maybe where a lot of kids slip through the cracks, where they're just like, I don't know what's going on in my home. I don't know. My parents are working all day, which some parents have to work all day. But at least that you're setting this, like, this tone in your house and your family that you're part of something really special. I think that's important.
Those are really good answers. Again, success it's so relative and it's so personal. Yeah. But it's I like getting everybody's perspective on it because it is different. You know. But I think it always comes back to the simplicity things. Simple things like we call success fulfillment and freedom. That's my 2 words. You know, I need to be fulfilled and have purpose in what I'm doing.
Right.
And I need to be able to be free.
You probably like that one.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Freedom's huge for me.
So big.
You want freedom. Freedom doesn't exist for morally standards, right?
Right.
Because there's always something that you need to do or achieve or accomplish. It's like we live in a "what have you done for me lately" society. It's like, oh, you haven't won World since 2021. Well, it's 2022, bruh. You know, so it's like there's another tournament coming up soon, and so it's just a weird thing. But I like freedom because I always think about it this way: there are a lot of guys who still wrestle at the senior level who have no shot of ever making a team, ever being a world medalist, and I'm like, man, how do you do that? How do you continuously fall short year after year after year, but you continue to come back and train hard and cut weight, be on the road, spend time away from your family and sacrifice and commit and never see what we would call, right, the pinnacle of the sport. And they just come back. And so it's hard for you to kind of have perspective, because if this was me, I'm like, I would not do that. But you know, for them, they're completely content and fulfilled with their pursuit. They're like, this is where I find my purpose. I'm really passionate about this. I love what I do. I don't need to win and enjoy wrestling.
Right.
Like, we've made it too much about winning.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're not winning, you shouldn't even do it.
That was hard for me to understand when I first got familiar with the freestyle ranks.
Yeah, you're like, why is that guy still wrestling?
Number 3 guy. I'm like, what
you're
is
like,
he
well, because he
doing?
likes wrestling.
Right.
Well, it took a while for me to be like, he really, like, this is not just about making the team.
Right.
I mean, that's the goal. It's like what we said, you have to have this thing that pushes you, but you're learning so much along the way. And some people just love it. Like when COVID hit and Jordan had to stay home, it was less about being stuck in the house and more just about that he couldn't go to the room. Like, I can't roll around with the guys every day.
Yeah.
Like that's where you guys find a lot of
culture
fulfillment.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's tough.
That's our spot.
That's good. Last question. It's a maybe a simple one, but of all the people you guys know out there that know, you know, it's the philosophy of wrestling, maybe had success on and off the mat, man, woman, whatever. Who would you like to see on here? Who do you think would give a good perspective
in the wrestling community?
Wrestling, fighting, combat sports. I get a lot of males, but I'd love to speak to some of the females in the world, because I think they have a great thing to add. But any males,
you know who I think would be good? Either 2 people, either Tamir Mensah or Sarah Hildebrandt.
Okay.
I think they both have really good energy.
Yep.
They're a lot of fun to be around.
Yep. Sarah's an Indiana girl.
Their energy is contagious, and so I think those Sarah. 2 from the female side would be a lot of fun to have on the show. I think from the male side, Tervel
I was just gonna say Tervel
is the guru. So he's a guy that you should definitely get on here, have him talk about mindset, perspective, winning, losing, dealing with fear. And then I would say lastly would be, who do you think? You got anybody? You know who'd be interesting? Nayshawn Garrett. Nayshawn would be.
You might be 5 hours.
Nayshawn is a very interesting interview.
Yeah.
He would be a guy that would probably be good to kind of.
I feel like I need to think about this for a while.
It's all good.
Jessica Medina is good. She's one of the developmental coaches for the women's side.
Okay.
At USA Wrestling, and she's had a lot of success in her first few years with the younger girls.
That's good.
She's great though.
I like that.
I'll think of somebody.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Helen's always. I mean, I'm trying to give like some unique answers here.
Pat Downey.
Oh yeah, he'd be fun.
You know what? He'd probably be great to interview. He has a crazy story. Like his life
very
is
likable
crazy.
guy. Yeah. He's very likable. Him on social and him in person.
Yeah,
they're 2 completely different.
Yeah, for sure. I love every
AJ
time
Ferrari.
Get AJ.
Every time I talk to Pat, it's a pleasant conversation.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people like that. They just, they're good people. They just social.
Yeah.
That's why I love the community. It's a great community.
It is.
I'm going to close this out like this. I spoke over, Jordan last time here. I kind of just, told him a little bit about how we see him on the outside, looking in. And, we've gotten to know each other just a little bit throughout the past few months. But I just want to share my heart with you, who we see, Lauren to be. Because, again, we believe you're a champion as well. And from the outside looking in, and even from, I was sitting there with my quiet time yesterday, kind of going through some stuff, and I felt pressed upon me is like, I really believe that you have a worshiper's heart. And what that entails, I look at someone like David in the Bible, it's this strength among people that people look to for leadership, don't understand all the time, but they follow. Mm-hmm. You're someone that's supposed to stand out, not necessarily be the background. Mm-hmm. That you are I feel like you are a leader that must be heard, that you were created to be busy, that idle hands for you is torture.
Yeah, it is.
And I feel that your love is infectious, and that your wisdom is wide and deep. Thank you. It should be shared. And I think that you can do literally whatever God puts on your heart. So I think that you have to dream big and expect mighty things. As a wife, I see your support as something that is uncommon. I know there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors, but we watch you through a computer screen or a TV screen and see Matt's side, and it comes across genuine, and it comes across as love. And we appreciate that as fans. And as a mother, you carry this perfect balance of nurturer, but also allowing your children to have enough room to grow. And I can't wait to see what your little warriors grow up to be with the two parents that you guys are to them. I always say behind every king, a great king is a great queen. And I think that you guys live the most incredible, amazing royal family life that I can see from this side. It looks beautiful. And we just appreciate you guys as a family. We appreciate you guys and what God's doing in your life. And I just challenge you guys to both keep fighting for success. So,
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Awesome. That's a wrap.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. That was great.